Hello there, and welcome back to the Judge Program for Star Wars Unlimited, Level 1 Certification Track Lessons. As always, I'm your host Jonah, and today we'll be finishing up Comprehensive Rules, Section 7, Abilities and Effects. We're focusing on Section 7.5, which covers keyword abilities, as there are quite a lot of them, and the list will grow as the game does. That does mean that this lesson won't always be comprehensive, but we'll release updates regularly to keep this information fresh. A keyword or keyword ability is a card ability that has bold red text and has specific meaning in the rules. While abilities like triggered abilities have meaning in the rules, each one can be different and is written out completely. However, a keyword like ambush has 6 sub-rules, and including all of that on a card would be a little bit excessive. The keywords that we're covering in this lesson are those that were in the first 5 sets, Spark of Rebellion through Legends of the Force. We'll add expansion lessons to cover the keywords that are released in upcoming sets. The list of keywords today is Ambush, Grit, Overwhelm, Raid, Restore, Saboteur, Sentinel, Shielded, Bounty, Smuggle, Coordinate, Exploit, Piloting, and Hidden. Keywords can represent any sort of ability or effect, but it's mostly triggered abilities and constant abilities. Card abilities can give keyword to a unit either as a constant ability or as a lasting effect. When a unit gains a keyword in this way, it's considered to be part of the card and can be removed, ignored, or affected by other abilities. As a quick example, if you give a card Sentinel with Gladiator Star Destroyer, your opponent can remove it with Spec Force Soldier, or ignore it with any Saboteur. If a card ability grants a unit keyword that it already has, the keyword doesn't stack unless it's followed by a numeral, like Raid or Restore, in which case the values are cumulative and it is treated as one ability. Or if the keyword is followed by a cost, like Smuggle, or a dash, like Bounty, and each repetition of the ability is considered a new ability. Ambush is a keyword that resolves like a triggered ability that says, when played, deployed, or created, if there's an enemy unit that this unit can attack, this unit may attack that enemy unit even if this unit is exhausted. We say resolves like because keyword abilities aren't actually when played or when defeated or on attack abilities. So if an effect is looking for those, it won't actually interact with keywords. This is true for several keywords, but we're not going to call it out each time. Ambush is one of the keywords that does not stack, so even if a card has multiple instances of ambush, it cannot attack multiple times. A unit with ambush enters play exhausted like any other unit. If there's no unit it can attack, or its controller decides not to make the attack, it remains exhausted. If an effect causes a unit to enter play ready, like Millennium Falcon Piece of Junk or Triple Dark Raid, that effect will resolve before the when played trigger. An attack resulting from an ambush is resolved like any other attack, with all of the steps, and is considered a modified action. Grit is a keyword whose effect is the same as the constant ability. This unit gets +1/+0 for each damage on it, and multiple instances of Grit do not stack. When a unit with Grit deals damage and takes damage simultaneously, as happens during combat, its power does not increase until after damage is dealt. However, if the other unit deals damage first, either through an ability like on Shoot First or an attack trigger, the Grit unit's power will update immediately before it deals its damage back. Overwhelm is a keyword whose effect is the same as the constant ability. While attacking, this unit deals its excess damage to the defending player's base. Multiple instances of Overwhelm do not stack. If the combat damage from an attacker with Overwhelm would not kill the defender, then no Overwhelm damage is applied. This may because the unit has enough remaining HP, has a shield token, has a damage prevention effect like Boba Fett's armor, or simply refuses to die like Chirrut. If the defender is defeated before the attacker deals combat damage, usually through an on-attack trigger, then all of the attacker's damage is considered excess damage. The attacker will deal its damage to the defending unit and the base simultaneously, and all the damage is considered pre-combat damage, even though the attacker is not considered to have attacked the base, even if all of its combat damage was dealt to the base. Raid is a keyword whose effect is the same as the constant ability. While attacking, this unit gets +X power, where X is the number following Raid. Raid does stack cumulatively. A unit with Raid 1 that gains Raid 2 now has Raid 3 and will get +3/+0 while attacking. The power bonus lasts for the same duration as other while this unit is attacking or for this attack abilities. It's important to remember that Raid is not a trigger. If a unit gains or loses Raid during an attack, its power is immediately adjusted accordingly. This is relevant for cards like Fifth Brother. Restore is a keyword whose effect resolves like the triggered ability. On attack, heal X damage from your base, where X is the number following Restore. Multiple instances of Restore stack. If a unit has Restore 1 and gains an additional Restore 1 from Home 1, when it attacks, it will trigger and heal the base for 2. Because the abilities are considered one ability, it is one instance of healing for 2, not 2 instances of healing for 1. Saboteur is both the constant ability, this unit may ignore Sentinel when choosing what to attack, and the triggered ability that resolves like, on attack, defeat all shield tokens attached to the defender. To ignore Sentinel means to determine the legality of the attack, as though no enemy units in the arena had Sentinel. They still have Sentinel, so something like Boba Fett Daimyo would still grant them +1/+0. Sentinel is a keyword whose effect is the same as the constant ability. Units in this arena can't attack your non-Sentinel units or your base. Abilities this unit gains can't prevent this unit from being attacked. This last rule isn't included in the reminder text for Sentinel, but is why Sabine Wren, Explosives Artist, has her reminder text. If there are multiple Sentinel units in the arena, the attacking player can choose which one to attack. Shielded is a keyword whose effect resolves like the triggered ability. When played, deployed, or created, give a shield token to this unit. Shielded does not stack, so a unit with multiple instances of shielded will only receive one shield token. However, a unit can have multiple shield tokens on it, and only one will be destroyed when the unit takes damage. It also resolves in the same window as other when played abilities, so if a unit has both shielded and ambush, you can choose the order in which they resolve. Now we get to the simple keywords. Bounty is a keyword followed by a dash and ability text, whose effect resolves like the triggered ability. When defeated or captured, an opponent may resolve the following ability. That opponent is considered to control this ability. If a unit has multiple bounties, each is independent and resolves separately. A unit can have the same bounty ability multiple times. These triggers will resolve in the same window as other when defeated or when captured abilities. Of note, IG-11 doesn't have a when captured ability, but a replacement effect that resolves before he can be captured. The subtitle really does say it all. Also, because these abilities resolve like a when defeated ability, that means they are not when defeated ability themselves. The consequence of this is that you cannot use Grand Admiral Thrawn, how unfortunate, to double the bounty trigger like you can with Bossk hunting his prey. The phrase collecting a bounty means resolves a triggered bounty ability. Now, while resolving a bounty is optional, and the player who resolves the bounty is the opponent of the player who controls the unit with the bounty, it is the responsibility of the owner of the card that gave the unit the bounty ability to make sure that the player who can collect the bounty actively makes a choice. It is not necessarily the controller of the unit with the bounty that has to announce the trigger. That may sound like unparsable nonsense, so let's go through a few examples. Alex plays Hylabon Enforcer, which Nico immediately attacks and defeats. Alex owns the card that granted the Enforcer the bounty ability, the Enforcer itself, and so must remind Nico of their opportunity to collect the bounty. Next, Alex plays Hylabon Enforcer, which Nico immediately plays Traitorous on and takes control of it. Alex then attacks and defeats the Enforcer. Alex is still the player who owns the card granting the bounty ability, and so Nico does not have to remind Alex of the Enforcer's bounty, even though Nico currently controls it. Finally, Alex plays Public Enemy on Nico's Alliance X-Wing. Despite Nico owning the X-Wing, which now has the bounty ability, Alex still owns the card that granted the ability, and so again, Nico does not have to remind Alex of the bounty trigger. Smuggle is a keyword whose effect is the same as the constant ability. You may pay cost Y to play this card from your resource zone, replacing it with the top card of your deck. This ability is active while this card is a resource. The total cost is determined by the cost of the smuggle ability and all cost modifiers, including aspect penalties, which must be accounted for. It is a modification of the play a card action that allows the player to play the card from their resources rather than just their hand. The card is considered to be played like any other card, going into play if it's a unit or upgrade, and going to the discard pile before resolving if it's an event. Smuggle is also an exception to the rule that face-down cards in the resource zone have no abilities. Smuggle continues to function. Each smuggle ability, granted from a card like Tech, Source of Insight, is considered to be an independent ability, and either cost can be paid if there are multiple options. While playing a card with Smuggle, it is still in its owner's resource zone, and consequently, if it is ready, it can be exhausted to help pay its own Smuggle cost. As the card enters play or is put into discard, the top card of the deck is put into play as a resource, exhausted at the same time. A player can even smuggle a card into play if they have no cards in their deck. They simply just don't add a card to their resources. This is part of the effect of the ability, not a cost that needs to be paid. This also doesn't count as trying to draw a card, and their base won't take any damage from this event. Coordinate is an ability that is always tied to other abilities, sometimes even other keywords. This is an ability that is followed by a dash, and is the same as the constant ability of, while you control 3 or more units, this card gains the following abilities. This means that if you don't have 3 units, the card won't even have the abilities following the dash, but will still have the coordinate keyword. These abilities do stack, so if a unit has multiple coordinate abilities or gains another, that will be treated as a separate ability, but it will function. This is also an ability that counts the unit that it is on, so if you play Plo Koon, he'll have Raid 3 from Coordinate, even if you only have 2 other units. Exploit is a keyword whose effect is the same as the constant ability. While playing this card, you may defeat up to X friendly units. For each unit defeated this way, this card costs 2 less, where X is the number following Exploit. Since this has a numeric value attached to the keyword, this makes the keyword able to stack. This increases the number of friendly units you are able to defeat, but does not increase the cost reduction that each unit gives to the card. The effect for Exploit gets used during step 3 of the Play a Card action, where you are determining costs. You can refer back to lesson 8 if you need a refresher on the process. If you do end up triggering any when defeated effects while using Exploit, all of these triggers will resolve at the same time as any when played triggers for the unit and upgrades, but after the event resolves for any events that you play. But what if you have multiple abilities that allow you to reduce costs? Let's go through a quick example of when this could happen. Let's say you're looking to play Battle Droid Legion as your first unit up for the turn with a when defeated ability, while also having Director Krennic on the verge of greatness in play. Director Krennic will be able to reduce the cost by 1, but what if you also want to defeat him for the exploit reduction? Then he wouldn't be in play to give his reduction effect anymore. Worry not, because you can apply the cost reductions in any order, so you can get the discount of 1 from Krennic before defeating him with exploit for another reduction of 2, meaning you can get a total discount of 3 for the Battle Droid Legion even while defeating Krennic, so you can play the Battle Legion for 6. That being said, you can technically exploit Krennic before using his reduction, meaning that Krennic will no longer be around to provide that reduction. That would end up making the Battle Droid Legion cost 7, but I'm sure we'd all want to play our cards for as few resources as possible. Now on to piloting, one of the more potentially confusing and intricate keywords. This is a keyword that is the same as the constant ability. You may play this unit as an upgrade on a friendly vehicle unit without a pilot upgrade on it by paying cost Y instead of its printed cost. Just like with Smuggle, a card can have multiple piloting costs, and each is considered independent. This also ties back into traits, where the pilot trait has some special rules to it, mainly that pilots can exist in play as either upgrades or as units, but are considered units everywhere outside of being in play. When you're playing a card using piloting, you're also considered to be playing an upgrade for the purposes of play a card and other abilities that might care about what you are playing a card as. So, if a card instructs you to play an upgrade or a non-unit card, you would be able to play a card using its piloting ability. This is an ability that changes how a card is played, so you couldn't use another ability that changes how a card is played, like Smuggle with it. You would have to choose one or the other, not both. Due to all the intricacies of this keyword, let's go through a few quick examples of how effects can change what a card with piloting can be played as. First, let's say you play a U-Wing reinforcement and find a Luke Skywalker, You Still With Me, that you want to play. Since U-Wing specifies searching and playing units, the only option for Luke is to be played as a unit. In a different scenario, let's say there's a Luke in a discard. Even though it's a unit in discard, you can play it using a fine addition, as that specifies an upgrade, and playing a pilot using the piloting keyword is playing an upgrade. But just because you can play Luke as an upgrade, a fine addition would not allow you to play Luke as a unit instead. Now, for the select few cards that have abilities like Cobb Vanth, the Marshal. Cobb Vanth lets you search for a unit when defeated, but allows you to play that card for free, not it, like U-Wing. Since it uses that special phrasing, you can play Luke as either a unit or an upgrade. Also, because Cobb only looks at the print cost in the top left, you can still play Luke for free, even with his piloting cost being above Cobb's normal restriction of cost 2 or less. To finish off this lesson, we have one more ability that is thankfully a little more straightforward than the last couple, and that's Hidden. Hidden is a keyword that is the same as the constant ability. This unit can't be attacked if it was played, deployed, or created this phase. Keep in mind, this only prevents attacking and not other effects or abilities, choosing it, damaging it, or defeating it. Even with the attack restriction from Hidden, Sentinel would still allow the unit with Hidden to be attacked, as that takes precedence. Also, if a unit with Hidden loses the ability the turn it's played, then it would be able to be attacked, as this is considered a constant ability, not a triggered when played effect. And with that, we've wrapped up abilities and effects. The next set of lessons will encompass the additional rules. Many of them have been covered to some extent in our exploration of the comprehensive rules, but some of them will be new. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or insights, be sure to join the Judge Community Discord and make your voice heard. Until next time, good luck and have fun.